Please, sir, don't kick us out of here. The millionaire Charlie Harrington visited his old abandoned house to tear it down, but what he found there changed everything. Stay until the end of this moving story that will show you how a few small intruders, rejected everywhere, saved a life without even knowing it. We begin. The afternoon light filtered through the velvet curtains, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air of the grand living room. Charlie Harrington remained motionless in his leather armchair, eyes closed and gnarled, hands resting on his knees. At 70, the man who had built a textile and agribusiness empire from nothing felt like a stranger in his own home. The high ceilings, the gold leaf moldings, and the Persian rugs that muffled every sound now felt like an unbearable burden. Every corner of that mansion screamed the name of Eleanor, Ellie, his wife, whose absence was an abyss no fortune could fill. It had been only a few months since cancer had taken the woman who had been his compass and his engine. Since then, every day for Charlie seemed meaningless. The luxuries felt like nothing special. He didn't even enjoy the food. He had spent his whole life with her. Everywhere he looked was her memory, her laughter, her voice, her gaze, her warm companionship. She was gone forever after a lifetime by his side. The light from the window reached his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a sweet, cheerful voice speaking to him. "Come on, up you get, darling. Don't be lazy. It's morning already. You know the early bird gets the worm." Charlie opened his eyes only to be met with the golden afternoon sun illuminating his face. But no one was speaking to him. He was completely alone. "Ah, I fell asleep again," his monotonous, listless voice said, breaking the silence of the empty room. Charlie no longer kept a schedule. He slept at any time, sometimes almost all day. "What's the point of waking up now if I don't enjoy anything I do?" he thought to himself. He stood up with difficulty, feeling the creak of his bones and the weight of a sadness that had settled in his chest like a stone. He approached the large window overlooking the perfectly manicured gardens, where two staff members worked quietly, pruning the rose bushes that Ellie loved so much. He no longer found beauty in the flowers, only the reminder that everything that grows eventually withers. The sound of several vehicles approaching the driveway interrupted his melancholy. It was his children. Ethan, the eldest, arrived from Sydney, where he managed the family's finance branch. Marcus came from his business trips abroad, and Lucy, the youngest, had momentarily left her life in the coastal city to visit the patriarch. Charlie received them in the foyer, forcing a smile that didn't reach his tired eyes. The three surrounded him with quick hugs and looks laden with genuine concern, but also with the impatience of those with packed schedules. "Dad, you look so pale," Lucy said, taking his hands tenderly. "You can't keep staying cooped up here depressed. This house is too big for you alone, and the air feels stagnant." "Lucy's right," Ethan nodded, discreetly checking his mobile phone. "We're worried that at this rate you'll get sick. I know you love this house that's full of memories of Mum, but I think clinging to the past like this can harm you. We've been talking, and we think you need a holiday, a change of scenery, to clear your head. You know? A cruise around the Mediterranean would be a good idea. Or perhaps a retreat in the Alps. You need looking after, Dad. We don't want you to get ill from feeding this grief." Charlie looked at his children and saw in them the success that he and Ellie had forged. They were good men and women, strong and capable, but they lived in a different world than his. Their lives were complete. Their families no longer revolved around that old oak tree that was starting to lose its leaves. He felt more than ever unnecessary, an antique, valuable piece of furniture that no one knew where to put anymore. "You're right, children," Charlie replied. His voice was a rasping whisper. "I've decided I'll take those holidays. I need to get away from all of this, clear my mind, and look for a bit of peace." The children exchanged relieved glances. They thought their father was finally accepting reality and looking for a way to heal. They didn't suspect that behind those words hid a much darker and definitive plan. Charlie asked them to let him organize his trip alone, that he wanted absolute privacy to find himself. After a quick dinner full of conversations about business and the grandchildren's future plans, the children said goodbye, promising to call him as soon as they knew he was at his tourist destination. When silence returned to the mansion, Charlie headed to his study. On the mahogany desk, he penned a letter with a trembling but resolute hand. In it, he asked for their forgiveness for what he was about to do. He told them how much he loved them and left detailed instructions on the total administration of his assets. It was a farewell letter. His intention was not to go to a luxury resort or a cosmopolitan city. His plan was to take a final journey through the paths of his memory, visiting the places where he and Ellie had struggled together, to end up at the place where he had met her, the old wooden shack in the high country, where their story began. The next morning, Before the sun had fully risen, Charlie left the mansion carrying only a small, worn leather suitcase. He drove his most modest car, the one he rarely used, and left the private estate. His first stop was the textile factory, a colossal concrete and glass structure covering several hectares. He stopped in front of the main gates, watching the parade of trucks and the smoke rising from the industrial chimneys. He remembered the day they bought their first second-hand sewing machine. Ellie spent entire nights hunched over, sewing humble shirts while he looked for customers in the local markets. Back then, exhaustion was a badge of honor, and every coin earned tasted like victory. They had built it together with effort and strategy. Now the factory produced millions. He stayed there for a few minutes and smiled, bidding farewell to that iron giant that represented the peak of his success. He continued his descent into the valley, where his property's sprawling farmlands stretched out. Thousands of hectares of wheat and corn swayed in the morning breeze. Charlie got out of the car and walked a few steps along the edge of the road. He remembered when the land was a dry, hard expanse that no one wanted. He and his wife had spent months removing stones with their own hands, sowing hope in a soil that seemed barren. She always used to say that the earth knew who truly loved it. Charlie felt a pang in his heart, understanding that now the land would continue to bear fruit, but the hands that loved it were already under it. The sun began to warm intensely as he reached the oldest part of the city, a suburb of narrow streets and peeling facades. There were the old shops he once rented with Ellie. They were small premises, with low ceilings and a damp smell, where they sold their first homemade products. Charlie stopped in front of one of them, now converted into a hardware store. He closed his eyes and could smell the aroma of fresh bread and the jams his wife prepared to attract customers again. He remembered their laughter when the rain filtered through the roof, and they had to use buckets to keep from getting wet. They were poor, terribly poor, but they were immensely happy because they had each other. "Are you all right, mate?" asked a young man passing on the pavement, seeing him so pale and absorbed. "Yes, son, just remembering a better time," Charlie replied with a sad smile. He got back into his vehicle. The journey of nostalgia was exhausting him physically, but his determination did not waver. He left the city behind and began to climb a dirt track that snaked towards the highest and most forgotten part of the bush. As he ascended, the landscape became wilder and the air purer. Fruit trees gave way to pines and scrubland. The asphalt disappeared completely, giving way to a dusty track that only those who knew it traveled. The afternoon sun was still strong, because he had started his journey very early. Finally, after hours of travel, he arrived at the place where everything had begun. It was a small plateau surrounded by wild vegetation. There, almost hidden by the scrub and years of neglect, stood the old house. It was a humble, grayish wooden structure, marked by dampness. This was the refuge where Charlie was born and grew up in the most extreme poverty with his parents. The place where he met Ellie, who was just a teenager living in a nearby shack, a girl full of dreams and hopes for the future. As they grew up, they fell in love, and she agreed to share her life with him. Despite having nothing to offer her but his hard work, Charlie stopped the car a few meters from the entrance. The silence up there was different from the mansion's. It was a silence filled with the whispers of the wind and the songs of birds, a silence that did not weigh but enveloped. He got out of the vehicle, feeling that his legs could barely support him. He walked towards the house, his heart beating with unusual force. His plan: light a fire at the back, lie down in the corner where there was once a straw bed, and, breathing the smoke for a long time, wait for eternal sleep to claim him. With no one to stop the fire, everything would turn to ashes. He no longer wanted to fight, no longer wanted to build. He had no reasons left, and he was tired. "I'm here, Ellie. My journey is over too," he whispered, tears rolling down his wrinkled cheeks. However, looking more closely around, he noticed something strange on the ground. The entrance was not entirely covered in scrub, but a small path towards the house had been recently cut. He lifted his gaze to look further, and suddenly saw a small, beautiful garden with astonishingly well-cared-for flowers. Charlie frowned, confused. That place was far enough away that no one would visit it, much less decide to live in it. Suddenly, 3 children came out of the house, chatting among themselves as if it were daily routine. They had baskets in their hands and headed to the flower garden. They were 2 boys approximately 10 to 12 years old, one slightly taller than the other, with slender, dirty bodies, as if they spent the day working. They were looking after a smaller girl. She looked about 6 years old. She smiled happily at the boys' jokes. The 3 children began to cut the flowers delicately. They were completely focused on their task, placing them in the baskets. Charlie, completely forgetting the purpose for which he had gone to the house, decided to approach slowly. His steps sounded in the scrub and dry grass of the ground, alerting the children to his presence. When they looked up, they froze as if caught committing a crime. Oh, no. The voice of the eldest was heard. They looked at each other with expressions of panic. It must be the owner. What do we do now, Charlie? At the short distance, he could hear the children's worried whispers. Who are you? Charlie managed to ask, softening his tone of voice as he approached more slowly and calmly, appearing harmless so as not to scare the children. Why are you in this place so far from everything? We don't have anywhere else to go, the eldest said, as if representing the other children. He took a step forward as if protecting them. I'm Finn, and he's my brother Josh, the first one said, trying to maintain composure. She's our little sister, Lily. Well, actually we're all orphans, and none of us are real siblings, but we decided to be siblings, the three of us. We ran away from the children's home in the low city. They used to hit us there and force us to work from dawn until we couldn't move anymore. The man who looks after us keeps all the money we earn selling things at the traffic lights. Charlie felt a jolt of indignation run down his spine. He knew the harshness of work well, but the idea of children being exploited in a place that should be their refuge ignited a spark of authority in him that he thought was extinct. He approached a little closer, and the children instinctively backed away. Relax, I'm not going to hurt you, Charlie said, searching his memory for the words Ellie used to calm their own children when they were small. This house was mine a long time ago. I came here to destroy it. I didn't expect to find anyone here. This house is in ruins. How are you living in a place like this? The children looked at each other, confused. To them, Charlie, with his fine wool dark suit and leather shoes, seemed like an inhabitant of another planet. Josh, the smaller, dark-haired boy, pointed to the flowers in the garden. We did that. When we arrived here, there was nothing but scrub. An old man showed us how to plant and care for them. We saw that the house was empty and very shabby, Josh explained shyly. Finn took the initiative to explain again. Josh and I fixed the roof with some branches and mud so Lily wouldn't get wet when it rained. We've been growing flowers to sell them in the town below. That's how we buy a little bread and milk. We don't want to bother anyone, we just want to be together. It's all right, but you can't live here, he finally said. His tone was serious and a little distressed. He was worried about the children barely surviving alone in a ruined house, thinking they deserved a better place. But the children were scared because it sounded to them like a cruel eviction announced by the homeowner. Please, sir, don't kick us out of here. Seriously, if they find us, they'll grab us again. We have nowhere to go. This place is better than the street, pleaded Finn. Charlie realized he had been misunderstood. No, I'm not kicking you out. I just think you should live in a better place. I'll go to the children's home right this minute. No, please, let us stay in our little house. We don't want to go back there, the girl shouted, on the verge of tears. Josh wrapped his arms around her as if comforting her for not being able to prevent them from being returned. Charlie looked at them for a moment and understood that if he left at that moment, the children would see him as the one who betrayed them and ruined their quiet lives. He was going to solve the problem of the children's home, but now was not the time. Fine, you can stay here if that's what you want, but you can't be here alone. It's dangerous without any adult to look after you. I will stay with you, Charlie said. His plan had changed. He was going to show the children he was someone they could trust and resolve everything at the children's home. Really, sir? Finn asked, surprised, still distrustful. That's right. I'm going to look after you from now on, so don't worry about a thing, Charlie said with a firm voice. Those words were simply to comfort the children, but for them, it was as if that grandfather was promising to be their family. While the two boys were still surprised and a little incredulous about the old man's kindness, Lily's face lit up with excitement. So, will you be our granddad now? She asked with a smile. Charlie realized the promise he had just unconsciously made. He watched the girl, searching for the words to explain that he would only look after them until they could live happily in the children's home again. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. The afternoon light seemed to make her face shine, illuminating her large, deep eyes. In that pure gaze, in the way her lips curved into a timid and hopeful smile, Charlie saw an almost identical reflection of his beloved Ellie when she was young. It was the same light, the same spark of life that would not surrender despite adversity. The millionaire's heart, which he himself had condemned to the darkness of death, violently flipped. He felt the air rush back into his lungs with a freshness he hadn't experienced since the day of his wife's funeral. Then he knew he had to answer. That's right. I'm going to be the granddad of all three of you. Yay! Celebrated Lily. jumping and clapping, delighted that instead of facing an evil homeowner, she had gained one more member for her small family. "Josh, we have a granddad now," she told her closer brother happily. "Heh. Yeah, it's true," Josh replied, a little nervous about the sudden news. Finn only smiled, watching her celebrate, but his heart remained anxious. He was a stranger. After all, Lily ran to fetch her basket, which had fallen to the ground earlier from the shock. She quickly picked out flowers into a small bouquet and offered it to Charlie. "They are for you," Lily indicated with a sweet voice. The little girl was giving him the most valuable thing they possessed. "Thank you for not kicking us out of our little house." Charlie accepted the flowers with trembling hands. The scent of the flowers, a mix of pollen and freedom, flooded his senses. He realized that those flowers did not come from a controlled greenhouse, nor had they cost a fortune at a luxury florist. They were the result of the effort of 3 children struggling to survive in absolute precariousness. "They are beautiful, little one," Charlie replied, feeling a knot forming in his throat. "Thank you very much." Finn watched Charlie's every reaction. Seeing how delicately he treated the girl, he could sense that he was a kind man. "Come with us. Since you'll be staying with us now, I'll show you where you can sleep." The old man was surprised. He was going to take them immediately to his mansion, buy them new clothes and food in abundance. But the children were calm only because they had assumed he would be the one staying with them in that old house. If he told them he would take them away, it might only cause them to run away from him. So he decided it was best to play along. For the moment, he entered the old house, following the children's steps. He looked around. He observed the precariousness of the sacks they slept on, the small, extinguished fire in the center of the room, and the total lack of comforts. He remembered his mansion full of empty rooms, his staff ready to attend to every whim, and his bank account overflowing with zeros, which could not buy him an ounce of the happiness that emanated from that bouquet of flowers. "Sir, thank you so much for letting us stay here, and for joining us," Finn said, turning to look at Charlie like a small leader of the household. "We will work very hard. One day I will pay you back this favor. I will return it 1,000-fold, he said with a determination that Charlie immediately recognized. It was the same courage he himself had when, as a young man, he decided he would not let his family go hungry, no matter how hard he had to work. Finn continued speaking. "Josh and I are going to earn a lot of money selling all the flowers. We'll save up to buy materials to sell more things to tourists. When we're big, we're going to fix this house completely. We'll put in lights, glass in the windows, and turn it into a luxury mansion for you to live comfortably. You won't have to be sad again." Charlie let out a short chuckle, a laugh that was born from the depths of his chest and physically hurt him because of how little he used it. How had they noticed he was sad? It was a marvelous and cruel irony. 2 children who had nothing were promising riches to one of the most influential men in the country. But there was no hypocrisy or self-interest in their words. There was a pure love and a sense of gratitude that Charlie had not seen in years, not even in the most distinguished social circles. "Are you laughing at us?" Josh asked, somewhat offended. "No, I'm not laughing at you," Charlie clarified, wiping away a treacherous tear that escaped his right eye. "I'm laughing at how blind I've been. I'm laughing because you have a heart bigger than any palace I've ever known." The millionaire fell silent for a moment, looking towards the window where the sun was beginning to dye the sky orange and violet. The plan to close his eyes forever in that place had dissolved, replaced by a curiosity and a need he didn't fully understand. These children needed him, but he realized that he needed them much more. The loneliness of his mansion was a desert, but this ruined house with these angels with dirty faces was an oasis. "We sold flowers during the morning. Since it's getting dark now, we should stay here. Going back down the mountain with the lantern is not a good idea for today. There's no light in this house, so we sleep early and wake up with the sun. Tomorrow we'll go together to sell those flowers. You'll see how the business goes for us," Finn said with a smile. Charlie smiled back. He remembered the dreams in which his wife seemed to wake him up early, telling him to get up because there were many things to do. These children had that same light in their eyes, the energy of someone who gets up every day with a goal, and now he had one too. He waited for everyone to fall asleep and tucked them in with the blankets and his jacket so the night wind wouldn't reach them, feeling once again that fragile lives depended on him. The first ray of sun filtered through one of the cracks in the wood, hitting Charlie's eyes directly. The awakening was different from the last few decades. There were no Egyptian silk sheets, no soft sound of air conditioning, nor the aroma of the gourmet coffee his butler used to leave on the bedside table. Instead, he felt the cold contact of the dirt floor and the weight of a ragged blanket that smelled of wood smoke in the bush. His back ached, a physical reminder of his age and the sacrifice of having slept on such a hard surface. But upon opening his eyes, he didn't feel the dead weight of the depression that had accompanied him since Ellie's death. Beside him, the 3 children slept soundly. Lily had her head resting on Finn's shoulder, and Josh was hugging Charlie's small leather suitcase as if it were a sacred treasure. The millionaire sat up slowly, trying not to make a sound. He observed his own gnarled hands, marked by age, and then looked at the children's, small, but already with premature calluses from working in the bush. A strange warmth flooded his chest. "Grandad, are you leaving?" Lily whispered, rubbing her eyes with her closed fists. Charlie smiled at her. And for the first time in a long time, the smile didn't stop at his lips but reached his gaze. "No, little one, I promised you we'd go sell flowers today, and a Harrington never breaks his word," he replied, helping her up. Breakfast consisted of a piece of stale bread that the children had carefully saved, and a little clear water boiled from a nearby creek. Charlie, the man who used to dine in the most expensive restaurants in Europe, savored that bite, feeling how valuable the food was. There was something in the children's generosity, in the way they made sure to give him the biggest piece. Before leaving, Charlie looked at himself in the reflection of a bucket of water. His designer suit was wrinkled and dusty. He took off his fine jacket and folded it carefully, hiding it under some sacks so as not to attract attention. He unbuttoned the cuffs of his white shirt, rolled up his sleeves, and ruffled his gray hair. To the eyes of any stranger, he was now nothing more than a humble old man accompanying his grandchildren. They walked up the hill to collect the freshest flowers. Lily guided him by the hand, showing him which ones were the most resilient and which had the sweetest perfume. Charlie watched her with his heart in his throat. The girl moved with a grace that constantly reminded him of Ellie. Every time Lily found a wild lily and let out a cry of joy, Charlie felt that Ellie was there, sending him a coded message in the laughter of that creature. The emptiness he felt in his mansion began to be filled with the simplicity of that field. Once several bouquets were collected, they began their descent towards the nearest town. Finn and Josh walked with firm steps, carrying the baskets with a dignity that moved Charlie. They passed Charlie's luxury car, parked behind the scrub near the house. "Careful!" Finn shouted with an alert pose. He looked around as if searching for someone. Josh and Lily also began to look around fearfully. "What's wrong?" Charlie asked, confused by their reactions. He was about to take out his keys to drive them to the town, but Finn's response paralyzed him. Those kinds of cars are usually owned by bad people. If they see someone nearby, don't trust them. He must be the owner of that car. Charlie was surprised. He didn't know what had made the children think that at their young age. But there must have been a reason. You shouldn't judge people by their possessions. Not everyone who drives those cars is bad. But you're right, it doesn't hurt to be cautious. Anyway, that's what I'm here for, to look after you. The children looked at him with relief, gladly accepting his advice and protection. They continued walking calmly. Charlie put his keys in his pocket. There was no way he was going to let them think he was a bad person when the children had already started to trust him. He decided to forget the car and experience life as the children did, walking, striving. Upon reaching the main square, the children positioned themselves in a busy corner. They asked Charlie to wait a couple of meters away. He was watching in silence. He saw how many people passed by, ignoring the pleas of the little ones. Some even looked at them with contempt, moving away as if poverty were a contagious disease. Charlie felt a dull rage boiling inside him. He wanted to approach, buy all the flowers in the town, and take the children to safety right at that moment, but he restrained himself. He knew that if he revealed his power now, he would break the magic of what was happening. He needed to understand life from this perspective. Mid-afternoon, they sat down to rest on the edge of a curb. They had sold only 3 bouquets. Charlie's feet were swollen, and the sun had slightly burned his neck. But he didn't complain. "Don't worry, Grandad Charlie," Finn said, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his shirt sleeve. "Today was a slow day, but tomorrow will be better." "Yes," added Josh with a gleam of pure ambition in his eyes. "We're saving every coin. When we have enough, you won't have to sleep on the ground anymore. We're going to hire the best builders in the world. We're going to put marble in that house like the palaces in the movies and buy you a new suit, one that shines." Charlie let out a genuine laugh, a laugh that resonated throughout the street and made a couple of passers-by stop and look at him. It was the greatest irony of his life. 2 children who didn't own shoes were promising marble and luxuries to the man who owned half the country's quarries. "What are you laughing at, Grandad? Don't you believe us?" Josh asked, slightly hurt in his pride. Charlie hugged the 2 of them, pulling them toward his chest. The smell of sun and effort from the children was much more real than the perfume of high society salons. "I believe you, children. I believe you completely," Charlie said when he caught his breath. "I'm laughing because it's been years since I heard anything so gutsy. You have a spirit that is worth much more than all the gold in the banks of this city." At that moment, Lily approached and put a small flower in the lapel of his shirt, right where he used to wear gold pins or insignia of honor. "So, you always look handsome." "Granddad," the girl whispered. Charlie closed his eyes for a second. In the silence of his mind, he heard Ellie's voice. It was as if she were telling him, "See, Charlie, the world didn't end with me. These children need you, and you need their light, so you don't get lost in the shadow of my memory." That thought gave him a peace that no medicine or therapy had managed to provide. Charlie had left his bank cards in the mansion, believing he wouldn't need to spend anymore. He only had a couple of banknotes in his pocket that he sometimes used for tips. He spent it on food for the children to their looks of astonishment. "Granddad, did you have money?" Lily said, almost drooling at the sight of the hot chicken soup placed in front of her. "That's right. It's the last I had left." "I'll have to go get more," Charlie said, thinking that the next day he would have to find a way to convince the children to leave that house. This is delicious," exclaimed Finn. "Yes, it's so warm it makes me feel very comfortable while I eat it," said Josh, who usually preferred not to speak due to shyness, but had let loose out of excitement. "Thank you very much, Granddad. It's the best food I've ever tasted," said Lily. "As long as I'm with you, I promise you won't lack anything," Charlie said with a reliable smile. Charlie felt very happy, and at the same time sad that they were so excited about a simple hot chicken soup. He decided just to enjoy the moment and laugh along with the children, enjoying a simple meal as a family. That night, back at the house, the atmosphere became more intimate. Charlie told them stories of his childhood, conveniently omitting his transformation into a millionaire. He told them how he too had gone hungry and how he had met a wonderful woman who taught him that love was the only wealth that does not depreciate over time. The children listened with wide eyes, finding in that old man not only a protector, but a mirror of their own dreams. "And was she pretty?" Lily asked, referring to Ellie. "She was the most beautiful woman to walk this earth," Charlie replied, looking at the stars through a hole in the roof. "She had your same eyes, Lily, eyes that could see beauty, even in the darkest places." Before sleeping, the boys approached Charlie with a small metal tin where they kept their earnings. "Take it, Granddad. You keep the money," Finn said with complete confidence. "We trust you. You're part of our family now." Charlie took the tin, feeling the weight of the low-value coins as if they weighed tons of responsibility. Those children were handing him everything they had, their sustenance and their future, without a second of doubt. The millionaire, who had always lived surrounded by contracts, lawyers, and guarantees, felt overwhelmed by that display of selfless faith. While the children settled down to sleep, Charlie stayed awake a little longer. He observed the house, that place he had wanted to turn into his tomb, and realized it had transformed into a temple of life. He no longer wanted to close his eyes forever. He wanted to wake up the next day to see Lily smile, to hear the grand plans of the boys, and to protect that spark of hope they had ignited in his withered soul. However, in the back of his mind, he knew this peace was fragile. He still needed to see what had happened with the children's home, to verify if no other child had fallen into the hands of evil people. But for that night, Charlie Harrington, the man who had everything and had nothing, slept with a smile on his face, protected by the embrace of 3 angels who had taught him that true fortune is not counted in banknotes, but in shared heartbeats. The morning presented itself with a lead-colored sky, loaded with a dampness that chilled to the bone. Despite the hostile weather, Charlie and the children were at the municipal market in the low city. They had managed to collect a considerable amount of flowers and small plants rooted in old cans. Charlie, with his linen shirt now stained with dirt and his hands marked by farm work, felt strangely alive. Every time he helped Lily arrange a daisy's petals or exchanged a knowing glance with the boys, the emptiness in his chest reduced a little more. However, the midday peace was shattered by the screeching sound of tires on the wet pavement. A gray utility truck, looking neglected but imposing, stopped abruptly in front of the children's makeshift stall. A corpulent man with coarse features and a look that distilled a cruelty fueled by years of impunity descended from the vehicle. It was Barry Baz Thompson, the administrator of the children's home the little ones had escaped from. Seeing him, the color drained from Finn and Josh's faces. The boys took a step back, instinctively interposing themselves between the man and their little sister. Lily dropped the bouquet she was holding and hid behind Charlie's legs, trembling with such violence that the old man could feel the fear vibrating through his own skin. "So, here you are, you ungrateful little rats," Baz roared. His voice was a lash that drew the attention of everyone present in the square. "Thought you could hide forever in the bush, eh? You've made me lose a lot of time and money." The man advanced with heavy steps, ignoring the glances of passers-by, who, intimidated by his presence, began to move away. Baz extended his large, calloused hand, grabbing Finn by the neck of his threadbare shirt. The boy tried to wriggle free, but the administrator shook him with a brute force that elicited a whimper of pain. "Let him go," Josh shouted, lunging at the man's leg, only to be shoved aside with a blow that sent him sprawling onto the asphalt. Charlie felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, a cold, calculating fury. He straightened up, and in that movement, his spine seemed to regain the firmness of his youth. His eyes, previously clouded by melancholy, sharpened like newly forged steel blades. "Release the boy right now," Charlie said. His voice was not a shout, but a command loaded with such absolute authority that Baz stopped, surprised by the tone of the old man who looked like a beggar. "And who the hell are you, you old coot?" the administrator spat, releasing Finn to confront Charlie with a mocking smile. "Another derelict, who thinks he's the granddad of these delinquents. Move it, or I'll break the few bones you have left." Baz raised his hand to hit Charlie, but the millionaire did not back down an inch. Instead, Charlie reached into his pocket and extracted a small metallic device, a satellite phone he kept for emergencies. With a blood-chilling calm, he dialed a speed dial number, while keeping his gaze fixed on the aggressor's eyes. "This is Charlie Harrington," he said into the phone, and the name echoed in the square with the weight of a court sentence. "I need my legal team, the state police, and the press in the main square of the Low City now. And call the premier. Tell him his job depends on what happens in the next 10 minutes. Baz was struck dumb. The smile of superiority began to fade as he observed Charlie's face. He started to notice details he had previously ignored. The quality of the watch the old man still wore under the sleeve of his dirty shirt. The way his mere presence seemed to dominate the surrounding space. And that name, which was synonymous with absolute power throughout the region. "See, Charlie Harrington?" the man stammered, taking a step back. "No, you can't be him. The great Charlie Harrington is on holiday overseas. This is a joke. The joke is over for you, Baz," Charlie declared, advancing towards him. The administrator, who had previously seemed like a giant, now looked small and miserable compared to the millionaire's dignity. "I've seen how you treat these children. I've heard their stories about your children's home, which is nothing more than a slave factory under your command. You will pay for every hit, every tear, and every coin you stole from them." In less time than Baz could react, the sound of sirens filled the air. Several police cars and 2 black luxury sedans surrounded the square. Men in dark suits and high-ranking officers descended from the vehicles, heading directly towards Charlie, ignoring the dirt on his clothes. "Mr. Harrington, your children warned us you had disappeared." "They were frantic," one of the lawyers said, bowing his head with respect. "What are your instructions?" Charlie pointed at Baz with a finger that didn't tremble. "This man has committed atrocious crimes against children. I want him arrested immediately, and I want you to start the paperwork for the complete purchase of the land and rights of the local children's home by nightfall. That place will no longer belong to this monster, but to the Harrington Foundation." The police handcuffed Baz while he shouted for clemency, but Charlie didn't look at him again. He knelt on the pavement, forgetting his pride and position, to hug the 3 children who were looking at him with a mixture of terror and adoration. "Granddad?" Lily asked, her eyes full of tears. "Are you really an important person?" Charlie stroked her hair, feeling his heart beat with renewed peace. The revelation of his identity did not distance him from them. On the contrary, it gave him the tools to be the shield they had always needed. "I am Charlie, your granddad," he whispered, "and I promise you that no one will ever lay a hand on you again." Lily hugged him back, but the boys remained silent, with a look of deep sadness and concern. The sun began to descend behind the mountain peaks, tinting the horizon with brushstrokes of fire and purple. Charlie, sitting on a stone bench with Lily in his lap, felt the weight of fatigue on his shoulders, but his gaze remained fixed on the boys. Finn and Josh stood a few meters away, hands clasped and heads bowed. The revelation of the old man's true identity had erected an invisible wall between them. For the children, that humble granddad, who slept on the dirt floor, had transformed into an unreachable giant, a man who moved the world with a single phone call. "Why are you so quiet, lads?" Charlie asked. His voice was a soft caress amidst the chilly air. "The danger has passed. That man won't hurt anyone again." Finn looked up, and Charlie saw a sadness in his eyes that hurt him more than any blow. It wasn't fear of the administrator, but fear of abandonment, of that loneliness that street kids know too well. Now that we all know you have a lot of money, there's no point in anyone returning to the old house, Finn whispered, with a knot in his throat. You have real houses with roofs that don't leak and good food. You ordered the children's home to be fixed up to take us there, right? Now that the children's home will be a good place, we'll have to go there. You don't need us to sell flowers for you anymore. Josh nodded bitterly, wiping away a rebellious tear with the back of his dirty hand. What? Does that mean Granddad won't live with us? Lily, hearing her brother, began to sob silently, clinging to Charlie's shirt as if it were her last life raft in a stormy ocean. The millionaire felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. He understood that to these children, his wealth was not a blessing but a sign that their time together was over. Before Charlie could answer, the roar of several high-speed engines broke the town's calm. 3 high-end black Utes utility vehicles braked violently near the square, kicking up a cloud of dust. Ethan descended from the first Ute, his face distraught and his eyes bloodshot from crying and lack of sleep. Behind him, Lucy and Marcus ran towards their father, followed by a group of private investigators and police officers who had helped in the search. "Dad," Lucy shouted, throwing herself at Charlie's feet, wrapping her arms around his legs in a desperate embrace. "My God, Dad! We thought we'd lost you forever. We found your letter 2 days ago." Ethan approached, trembling from head to toe, holding a crumpled envelope in his hand, the farewell letter Charlie had left in his study. His hands shook so much that the paper crinkled loudly. "How could you do this to us?" Ethan asked, his voice broken by anguish. "We've searched every hotel, every hospital, every corner of the city looking for you. The police said you might have done something crazy. We were terrified that you were alone, suffering, wanting to die without giving us a chance to tell you how much we love you. Do you have any idea how we would have been if something had happened to you?" Marcus knelt on the other side of his father, covering his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. The emotional impact of seeing their father in stained clothes in a forgotten town, surrounded by unknown children, and with an appearance of fragility they had never seen in him, left them speechless. Charlie looked at his biological children and felt profound shame. In his grief over Ellie's loss, he had forgotten that the value of his life was not decided only by him, but also by the people who loved him. Although he felt he was no longer useful, others still saw him as valuable. "Forgive me," Charlie said. And his own tears finally flowed freely, tracing the wrinkles of his face. "I was consumed by sadness that blinded me. I felt I no longer had a purpose, that my place was with your mother and that you no longer needed me. I was a coward for wanting to leave you and end my suffering without thinking about how you would be." Lucy lifted her head, looking at the 3 children who were watching the scene with astonishment and shyness. It was the first time they had seen adults cry, and they didn't understand why. Lucy saw little Lily, still hiding behind her father's arm, and the boys who seemed to want to disappear. "Who are they, Dad?" Lucy asked, softening her tone as she wiped away her own tears. Charlie gestured for Finn and Josh to approach. The children advanced with hesitant steps, intimidated by the elegance and bearing of the millionaire's children. Charlie took them by the shoulders and introduced them with a pride that lit up his eyes. "They are my guardian angels," Charlie declared firmly. "When I arrived at the old house in the high country to close my eyes and let go, they were there. They gave me a roof, shared their bread with me, and gave me flowers when I only had shadows. These children didn't let my heart stop. They taught me that there is still beauty in the world, and that there will always be someone who needs a little love to keep going. Without them, I wouldn't be here." The silence that followed was dense and charged with a purifying emotion. Ethan, Marcus, and Lucy looked at the little ones with a new, profound gratitude. They understood that these children, in their poverty and helplessness, had achieved what all the money and influence of the Harrington family could not. They gave their father back the desire to live. Ethan stood up and approached Finn and Josh. Despite his impeccable $3,000 suit, he crouched down to their height. With a gesture of tenderness, he placed his hands on their shoulders. "Thank you," Ethan said sincerely. "Thank you for looking after our dad when we didn't know how to do it. He is everything to us, and you gave him his life back. From now on, you will never lack anything. You are part of us." Charlie stood up, holding Lily in his arms. He looked at his 3 older children, and then at the 3 children. The bridge between his 2 worlds had been built with the tears of that reunion. "Children, I have a request to make of you," Charlie said, looking at Ethan, Marcus, and Lucy. "I have decided that I will not return to the mansion alone. I am formally adopting Finn, Josh, and Lily, They no longer have to worry about children's homes or selling flowers to eat. I want them to grow up with us, to receive the education they deserve, and to fill the halls of that house, which has been so silent, with laughter." The children opened their eyes wide, unable to believe what they were hearing. Lily wrapped her little arms around Charlie's neck and hid her face in the old man's shoulder, crying with happiness. Finn and Josh threw themselves into Charlie's arms, sobbing with a force that vented years of mistreatment and abandonment. "Will we really be a family?" Josh asked, with a thread of a voice. "Forever," Charlie replied, "and the old house will not be demolished. We will fix it up to be a beautiful place, a reminder of where we came from and how love found us in the midst of the storm." Lucy approached and hugged the children along with her father, and soon Ethan and Marcus joined the group hug. In the middle of that humble square, surrounded by police and onlookers, the Harrington family rebuilt itself from the ashes. The biological children accepted the little ones with genuine affection, understanding that love does not divide but multiplies. Weeks later, the Harrington estate was no longer a mausoleum. The sound of Lily's feet running through the gardens and the voices of the boys studying in the library had returned the soul to the property. Charlie no longer spent his days sitting sadly in front of Ellie's portrait. Now, every time he looked at the painting, he felt she smiled back, pleased with the garden of lives he was cultivating. The children's home had been transformed into a center of excellence, a refuge of peace for hundreds of children, who now had a bright future, thanks to the vision of a man who returned from death to give life. Charlie walked through his mansion garden, wearing a small wild flower in his suit lapel, the same one Lily had given him on the street. He knew that his days on Earth had a new and powerful meaning. He was no longer just the owner of a textile empire. He was the granddad, the father, and the protector of a new legacy. Loneliness had gone forever, defeated by the simplicity of 3 angels who taught him that as long as there is someone to love, there will always be a reason to wake up the next day. If this story touched your heart, support us with a like. Let us know in the comments what inspires you to wake up every day. We would love to read you. Subscribe so you don't miss new emotional stories. We'll see you in the next story.